I'm Daniel. This happened back when I was 20, grinding through community college. I covered my tuition by working the closing shift at a convenience store a town over. My routine was rigid. Train there, work until close, train back. It sounds exhausting, but I needed the money, so I didn't have much of a say in the matter. It was the dead of winter, and the weather had been miserable all week. That specific night, the snow decided to ramp up right before we closed, and the roads went from clear to impassable in about an hour. By 10 p.m., the plows couldn't even keep up. My manager offered me a lift home, but he lived in the complete opposite direction. I knew if he drove me, he'd be fighting drifts for an extra hour just to get back. So, even though the train was going to be a nightmare, I told him I'd stick to the rails. When I got to the station, it was empty, because no sane person was out in that weather unless they absolutely had to be. The train was running late, which gave the snow plenty of time to pile up on the platform. When it finally rattled in, I grabbed a seat near the doors. The car thinned out stop by stop until it was just me and one guy sitting way at the far end. He was wearing a heavy hood, and he was completely motionless. I mean, literally not moving a muscle. It was unnatural. Most people shift around or check their phones, but this guy looked like a statue they'd forgotten to move. The moment the train screeched into my stop, I stood up. I checked the reflection in the window and saw him stand up at the exact same second. I stepped onto the platform, and sure enough, the doors down the line opened and out he came. My home station is small, and with the storm raging, the visibility was trash. The train pulled away, and the silence hit me immediately. It was just me, him, and the wind. I had to make a split-second decision. Usually, I take a shortcut that hugs the tracks and cuts through a narrow alley. But that path is totally unlit and fenced in, with a guy matching my every move behind me. I'd have to be an idiot to walk into a dark, enclosed space. So, the main road was the only real option. It added 20 minutes to the walk, but at least there were streetlights. I started walking, keeping a brisk pace. The snow was deep, so running wasn't really an option without risking a twisted ankle. I checked over my shoulder after a block. He was there, a dark shape under a streetlight way back. He matched my pace perfectly. It wasn't a coincidence. I cut straight to my house, locked the door, and went to my room. My manager had asked me to finish some inventory logs remotely, so I opened my laptop to distract myself. My parents went to sleep, and the house went dead quiet. I was deep in the spreadsheets when I heard it, a distinct crunch. It came from the side yard, the heavy sound of a boot packing down fresh snow. I froze. Then came a dull thud against the siding. Not a branch, but something solid hitting the wall right under my window. I killed my desk lamp, peered through the crack in the curtains, and I nearly yelled. He was right there. He was standing in the yard, wedged between the house and the fence and facing my window. He was perfectly still again, just like he had been on the train. It was that same unnatural stillness, like a predator waiting for movement. I dropped the curtain and scrambled to wake my parents. My mom dialed 911 immediately. My dad grabbed a baton and went to the front door. The cops took forever to arrive because the roads were a total mess. By the time they finally shone their flashlights around, the yard was empty, but the evidence was undeniable. Fresh boot prints led from the street right up to my window and then back out. No other tracks anywhere. Since he hadn't actually broken a window or forced the door, the police told us their hands were technically tied. They couldn't launch a manhunt for a guy standing in a yard. They took a report and left. I never saw the guy again. I'm 32 now, and this happened when I was 30. I was working as a junior IT guy at a law firm, even though most people my age in the field were already way ahead of me. I'd wasted most of my 20s bouncing between random jobs and only got into IT late, so I took whatever I could get. This was my first office job, and I didn't want to screw it up. Our office was on the 8th floor of a big office building downtown. During the day, it felt like any other place. People walking around, phones ringing, printers going off. At night it was different. By a little after 6, pretty much everyone was gone, and it would just be me and the hum of the server room. I usually stayed late to run updates and backups once everybody logged off. One night I had to push a bigger update than usual. My boss told me it would take a few hours. No one asked if I could stay. It was just kind of assumed. Around 6:30, the last few people said goodnight and left. The lights in the hallways went into that low power mode, and the place got quiet in that heavy way offices do after hours. I sat at a desk near the server room, watching progress bars crawl across my screen. At some point, I heard a loud, dull bang from somewhere below or out in the stairwell. It sounded like one of those heavy doors slamming shut. It cut through the silence enough that I actually took my hands off the keyboard and just sat there listening. Nothing followed it. It stayed completely quiet. For a second, my heart was racing, but forced my eyes back to the monitor. I didn't really believe that, but I didn't know what else to do. A little later, I got up to grab some water from the kitchen. On the way back, something caught my eye. The door to the back service hallway was slightly open. That door is always shut. It leads to a short corridor with the emergency stairs and a small storage closet where we keep old monitors and boxes. Hardly anyone ever uses it. Most days I don't even look at it. I walked over and pushed it open. The hallway light was on. The stairwell door at the end was closed. The closet door was closed. There was no sound at all. I checked the stairwell door handle, listened a second, then backed out and closed the service door firmly behind me. I had maybe an hour of work left. I really just wanted to finish and go home. But after that, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was on the floor. I'd be leaning toward the screen, reading lines of text, and out of nowhere, I'd get this strong sense that someone was standing a few desks behind me, watching. I pushed my chair back and stood up, automatically turning toward the front of the office where the light switches are. I was about to take a step when I heard footsteps. They were soft but clear. Shoes on carpet from somewhere out in the dark, in the direction of the reception area. Slow, steady steps. There were no voices, no jangling keys, nothing that made it sound like a cleaner or security. Just those footsteps coming straight toward the part of the office where I was. My whole body felt like it locked up for a second, and then everything in me just flipped to run. Instead of going toward the sound, I turned and sprinted the opposite way toward the back. I went straight for the service door, grabbed the handle in the dark, yanked it open, and slipped into the hallway. The light there felt blinding compared to the office. I hit the stairwell door, shoved it open, and started running down the stairs as fast as I could. 8 floors of concrete steps, my hand sliding on the rail. I burst out into the lobby, barely said anything to the security guard at the desk, and went straight outside. Once I was on the sidewalk, I pulled out my phone and called 911. I was out of breath and stumbling over my words. A patrol car showed up after a little while. The officers went inside with the security guard to check the building. I stayed out front, staring at the glass doors. When they came back, they said they didn't find anyone on my floor or in the stairwells. The building manager pulled what he could the next day. From what they told me, there was footage of a man entering the building earlier in the afternoon, sticking close behind another person as they badged in so it didn't flag as an extra entry. Later, a camera in the hallway outside our floor's elevator caught someone stepping out of the stairwell and walking in the direction of our offices. After that, there was nothing clear. There were no cameras in the back hallway and nothing that showed him leaving our floor. That was the last I ever heard about it. No follow-up call saying they'd found him, no explanation of what he was doing there or what he wanted. I stopped volunteering for late updates right away, and a couple months later I left the firm altogether. This happened last year when my life was already kind of falling apart. I'd gotten married way too young, straight out of school, with no real plan except, we'll figure it out. We didn't. Money was always tight. I bounced between short-term jobs and the stress turned into constant fighting. By the time we split, I was broke, back in my old room at my mom's house and just taking whatever work I could get. That's how I ended up on nights at a gas station a few miles outside town. The station sits on a 2-lane highway, right before a long empty stretch that leads toward the state line. After midnight, it's basically just strangers passing through. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most nights were the same. A few cars at the pumps, someone coming in for an energy drink or smokes, and then a lot of standing around behind the counter with my phone. I always parked my little hatchback off to the side of the building where I could see it from inside. That car was the only thing I actually owned outright. This night was quiet. From 11 to about 1 a.m., almost no one came in. I walked the aisles a couple times to straighten things and then ended up leaning on the counter, scrolling, glancing up whenever headlights went by. A little after 1, a dark SUV pulled into one of the spaces right in front of the doors, not at the pumps, just right up front. I put my phone down and watched. The driver got out and came in. Looked mid-30s, average build, plain jacket. He glanced at me for half a second, then turned into one of the aisles. He walked slowly up and down, grabbing random things and putting them right back. It didn't look like someone shopping. It looked like someone hanging around without a reason to be there. He did that for maybe a minute, then suddenly headed straight back out, just out the door and into the SUV. I watched him through the front glass. He got in, closed the door, but he didn't leave. I could see his shape moving around inside, leaning over like he was reaching across the passenger seat or into the back. The front of the SUV was angled just enough that I couldn't really see what he was doing, just that he wasn't sitting still. Then, he opened the door again and came back in. The second time he walked in, the feeling in my gut was different. People don't usually do laps like that out here at 1 in the morning. He came straight up to the counter and started talking about how quiet it was and how long my shift went. I kept my answers short. He said his check engine light had come on and asked if I could take a quick look under the hood, see if anything looked obviously wrong. The way he said it sounded casual. I'd stepped out to help people before, stuck gas caps, loose wipers, so it didn't feel like something I could refuse without making it weird. We walked out together. He already had the hood popped, so he lifted it the rest of the way. I leaned in and looked over the engine bay. I don't really know cars, but I checked for obvious stuff. Nothing jumped out at me. I told him it didn't look too bad from what I could see, and that a mechanic in town would need to actually check it. That's where my memory cuts. It was like somebody hit a switch. 1 second I was standing there outside with him. The next second, there was nothing in between. When I came to, I was on the floor inside the store, partly behind the counter. My head was pounding on one side, and my ears were ringing. A police officer was crouched over me, saying my name and asking if I could hear him. A couple I'd never seen before stood near the coffee area with this worried look. The officer said the couple had pulled in to get gas, come inside when nobody was at the counter, and found me on the floor by myself. They called 911. I looked out through the windows. The SUV was gone. That didn't surprise me. Then I looked toward the side of the building where I always park. My hatchback was gone too. The space was just empty. Later, once paramedics checked me, and I could sit up without feeling like the room was spinning, the officers and my manager pulled up the camera footage. That almost made me feel worse, because the SUV was in that front spot. The outside camera didn't really catch much of it. You could see a bit of the hood and the lights, but not the plates. It showed me walking out with him and leaning over the engine. Then there was a small bit of movement, and my body dropped out of the frame. You never actually see what he hit me with or how. The inside footage filled in the gap. A minute or two after I went out, the front door opened again. A second person came in, different build, wearing a cap and hoodie, went straight behind the counter like he knew where to go, reached down to the little dish where I always left my keys, grabbed something and walked right back out. He was in the frame for maybe 10 seconds total, head down the whole time. The police logged it as an assault and a vehicle theft. They told me the video was grainy, the SUV's plate wasn't clear, and that small cars like mine usually don't stay in one piece very long once they're taken. I never saw that car again. They never told me they'd caught the guys. I was 19 when I started working nights at a big box store doing stocking after closing a few days a week. It wasn't a job I thought much about because most nights were quiet and repetitive. That night, the store closed earlier than usual. The manager and the rest of the crew left before everything was finished. I was told to stay back for a couple of hours to finish one of the back sections. It didn't seem strange at the time because I had done similar things before, and the doors were locked. The lights were dimmed to the usual after-hour setting. I had been working in the back aisles for a while, moving boxes and fixing shelves, when I noticed someone standing farther down the aisle, looking in my direction. At first I assumed someone else had stayed late without me realizing it, but after a moment it hit me that I had watched everyone leave, and there shouldn't have been anyone else inside. He walked closer and said he had gotten locked inside by accident, asked if I could show him to a restroom. The explanation itself wasn't strange, but the way he said it felt off, because he sounded calm and almost casual. If I were stuck inside a closed store, I think I would have sounded different. I told him the customer restrooms were toward the front of the store. He paused and then said he thought there was a restroom in the back for employees, and started walking in that direction. I followed because I didn't have a reason not to yet, and I didn't want to assume anything was wrong. As we walked farther back, the aisles became darker and quieter. We passed areas I normally wouldn't take someone through, and I kept expecting us to reach a door or sign that would confirm where we were going. But nothing like that showed up, and I became more aware of how far we were from the front of the store. When we turned into a narrow side hallway, I noticed the handle of a knife sticking out of his pocket. It wasn't tucked away or hidden in any way. When I slowed down slightly, he noticed and moved his hand toward it and told me to keep walking. It was only then that I fully realized we were heading toward the loading dock and that there was no restroom anywhere near it. Whatever reason he had given for being back there didn't make sense anymore. When we reached the dock entrance, he stepped slightly in front of me and started pulling the knife out enough for me to see the blade while positioning himself, so I couldn't go back the way we came. At that moment, the PA system turned on for one of the automatic announcements that play after closing. The sound echoed through the store, and he reacted just enough for me to move. I shoved a nearby display into him and ran toward the front without stopping. I hit the alarm and locked myself in the office and called the police. When they arrived a few minutes later, the man was gone, and one of the emergency exits near the loading dock had been propped open. Nothing in the store was missing or damaged. I finished the shift later and went home. From what I know, they never found him. I still don't know how long he had been inside the store before I noticed him, or what he planned to do once we reached the dock. But I know he wasn't lost, and he didn't need a restroom. That's the part of the night that still haunts me.